Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about one of my all-time favorite books in the series, The Cave of the Lost Cities. If you haven't read the series and you're planning to, I would suggest you leave right now. Or if you're still in the middle of the series, leave now. Because this is the last book, and if you haven't read it, I'm going to give you a lot of spoilers. So you probably don't want to watch this if you're planning to read it. Cave of the Lost Cities isn't a super popular series. So if you haven't heard of it, I'm going to give a bit of an overview of it, just so that we're all on the same page. So Cave of the Lost Cities is about a girl named Sophie who's lived with humans all of her life and then finds out that she's an elf. And she finds this out when she's on a field trip with her class, and she finds Fitz, who is an elf who brings her to the Lost Cities, where she goes on many adventures. Her friends are Fitz, Dex, Keith, Bianna, Morella, Lynn, Tam. Her and her friends become part of the Black Swan. And then throughout the series, they're basically trying to defeat this group called the Never Seen, which is what they're up against as the Black Swan. So Unlocked is the last book in the series. It's 8.5 because it's not really a book. It sort of has things about previous books that you sort of get an overview about it. And then it has a little novella at the end, which is like the actual book. This is the cover, and I absolutely love it. It's gorgeous. They did such a good job with this one. I like to think that this book is sort of about what Sophie has gone through because of all the scenes of where she's been, and then her on Sylvanie in the middle. She looks a little bit younger on this book, and I read an article about how Shannon Messenger had done that on purpose to sort of show how much Sophie has grown over time. This is definitely one of my favorite books. I love how Shannon Messenger puts stuff in there so that we get to know more about the characters and get to see a little bit more about them. And we get to get a little bit more insight on Keith, which was super exciting, and I really loved that. So the book starts out with a Registry Files. So it starts out with a little author's note from Shannon Messenger, and then there's the registry. There's an author's note at the beginning of everything that sort of gives a review about what that section is about. So the Registry Files, there's Sophie Foster's, Fitz Vackers, Bianna Vacker, Dex Disney, Keith Sensen, Tam Song, Lin Song, Wiley Endel, Stina Hex, Morella Reddick, Grady Ruin, Adeline Ruin, Alvin Vacker, Della Vacker. There's Inaccessible Files, and then there's the main registry list. So in the registry, there's registry files for each of them, which sort of has a little bit about their life. Sophie first coming to the Lost City, her becoming part of the nobility, and big moments that have happened in her life, like Foxfire. They're basically just all about what they've gone through. Keith's file was my favorite because in his file, Dex had gotten him into the system, so he ended up changing everything in the file, and that's why I loved it so much. The inaccessible files are basically just the files that it tells you don't have access to, and in the main registry list, it just has like the families and then the names of the families. So yeah, that's the registry list. Also, after Sophie's file, there is her medical records, because if you've read the series, you know that she is always in the healing center. So there's Elwyn's medical records for her. And then after Keith, there's his detention files, which also, if you've read the series, you know how much trouble he gets into and that he's been in detention many, many times. After the registry files, there's the World of the Lost Cities. So in the beginning, there's a map of the Lost Cities with all of the locations that we've heard of, and some locations that we haven't heard of or that we don't actually know their name. So it has the author's note, the mapped locations, it tells you all about those. Then after that, there's the portraits, which was one of my favorites because you sort of get to see characters. So the portraits are Sander and Grizzle, Bow and Row, Flory at Callus Panic's Tree, the council, the foster family, the E&LC family, the Song family, Elwyn and Livy, and the collective of the Black Swan. So the pictures were really interesting because when I saw the pictures, I definitely did not imagine the characters that way, and it was very different. The families, I knew what they looked like because the characters are usually on the covers. It was nice to see the council because you never really get a description of all the characters that well, so seeing the council, it's easier just to see what they look like, and then you can imagine them how they really are. And it's just really nice to see the families. The foster family is Sophie's human family before she found out she was an elf. The E&LC family is Wiley with his mother and father when he's really young, before his mother died and before his father was put in jail. The Song family is Lynn and Tam's family before they were banished. And then Elwyn and Livy, and there's Elwyn in his colorful clothes with his spectacles on. And then there's also Bullhorn, and Livy is holding her mask that she uses to disguise herself as part of the collective in her hand. The collective, it has all of the collective in their disguises. After that, there's the life and the lost cities. There's the council, the elven culture, the nobility, the abilities versus the skills. Like, everyone knows that every elf has a special ability, but there's also skills that they can use. Foxfire, Excellium, protected creatures, food and drink, gnomish plants, fashion, hobbies, sports and games, gadgets, alchemy and elixirs, medicine, the prime sources, and the unmapped stars. So the council basically has the registry files of each counselor, and then the basic elven culture basically just talks a little bit about the elves and their daily life. The nobility gives all the nobility, which is Team Valiant. Alden is in there, and then so is Grady. And then abilities versus skills just talks about the abilities and the skills. Foxfire talks a lot about Foxfire, and then Excellium talks about Excellium, obviously. The protected creatures, it talks about all the creatures that are on the brink of extinction. And then food and drink is the food and drinks that they eat and drink. And I cannot get over how good they looked and how good they sounded. My mouth was watering after I read that part. Then there's Gnomish Plants, which is basically written by Flory, and it's a little bit about the plants that gnomes grow. Fashion is Bianna's little section in here, where she talks about the fashion, because everyone knows that Bianna is a fashionista. Gadgets and alchemy and elixirs are Dex's. He talks a little bit about the gadgets he makes, and he's really good at alchemy. The prime sources, which are sunlight, starlight, and moonlight, which are first talked about in Legacy. Then the unmapped stars is a map about all the unmapped stars that I think Sophie might have drawn. After that, there's the rebel groups, which are only the Black Swan and the Never Seen. The Black Swan has basically Sophie writes what she knows about each of the people in the collective. The Never Seen has their symbols. Intelligent species has all the intelligent species, which are basically all of the species. There's the goblins, ogres, gnomes, trolls, dwarves, and humans. I'm surprised there's no elves in there, but they basically talk about elves everywhere else, so why add them in again? It talks about the bodyguards, and sort of how they live and where they live. Next comes my favorite part of the entire book, Keith's memories. He has pictures of them. So there's art from Keith. There's the meeting from the first book, Keith of the Lost Cities, the flight from exile, the leap from Everblaze, the betrayal from Never Seen, the disaster from Lodestar, the twin from Nightfall, the Tribulin from Flashback, and the thing from Legacy. I'll explain what the thing is because we all know what it's about. So some of these I actually didn't remember. I remembered the flight from exile because it was one of my favorite scenes. And then the leap from Everblaze, I don't think I remember that. Then there's the betrayal from the Never Seen, which is when Keith goes off to join the Never Seen. And then the disaster from Lodestar, which is when the castle in Eternally fell and Sophie and Adeline hadn't come out, and Keith talks about how worried he was, and I loved that part. Then there's the twin from Nightfall, which is when they find out that Mr. Forkle has a twin. And then there's the Tribulin from Legacy, which is Alavar's Tribulin when he was tried for what he'd done. Then there's the thing from Legacy, which is a big part about Legacy. It's Keith's transformation. You can see that Keith is glancing over at Sophie, which I love. So the commentary was really sad and really sweet. I remember I read all of them and I cried for some of them, and I laughed as well. Then there's the novella, which is where it really got interesting. So in Legacy, we leave off with two things that we really want to know. A, what happened to Keith? B, what is the secret in Orly's cache? Because in the end of the book, Sophie is talking with Orly, and Orly is basically explaining about the secret that she thinks is in her cache. So we start off unlocked with just what we started. I'm not going to go too much into detail. I'm just going to give a little bit of an overview about it. So Orly tries to unlock her cache, and then they see this memory that she has that's been stored in her cache. And then she finds out Keith is awake, and then she goes to see him, and they find out what his new ability is and what he can do. And Keith sends Sophie away trying to protect her. Keith goes to Elwyn's home and stays there and is not speaking because he's afraid that his ability will hurt someone. And he works with Dex to try to get a gadget to stop his ability. In the meantime, Sophie and Fitz are working on trying to find Alvar because they want to find more about what happened to Keith and what Lady Gisela wants to do with him. They eventually end up interviewing Glimmer, which was the member of the Never Seen that left at the end of Legacy. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up, and I would really appreciate it if you subscribed. You can find me on Fandom. My name is Kiva Girl, and I will most likely be on the Keep of the Lost Cities wiki. Please check out my sisters, E&LC, on their YouTube channel. They like to do a lot of slime videos, so if that's what you're into, you should totally check it out. And see you later.